Welcome back. Hope that you've read your textbook and filled up the table. Now, if you haven't read your textbook and you are coming here for some easy answers, go and read your textbook. It's always very helpful to read your textbook. It will help you to understand things better when you're in class. It will help you to gain the skill of reading and learning to pull out information from a large piece of text. Alright, so let's now go through what you have read through in your textbook. Alright, so hopefully, as you read your textbook, you should be able to identify these layers, the layers of a leaf. Now I put here, you must know your layers. Please know your layers very well, because you will need to know how to identify them, to label them, and to describe them. So here we go. Okay, this top layer here, near the top of the leaf, is the upper epidermis. Okay, then followed by the palisade mesophyll. In the middle, in the vascular bundle, we have the xylem and the phloem. And then followed by the spongy mesophyll. And finally, at the bottom, the lower epidermis. Now we'll be looking at each layer in detail and how they are adapted for photosynthesis. So let's begin with the upper epidermis. It is this top layer of cells at the top of the leaf. So if you observe it, what you'll notice is that it is a single layer of closely packed cells, right? Just one layer, and the cells are all very close to one another. And on top of the cells, on top of the upper epidermis, you'll find a transparent waxy cuticle, a thin layer of wax. Now wax is waterproof. It doesn't allow water to pass through. So it helps the leaf to reduce water loss. Without this waxy cuticle, it is possible for water to leave the leaf from or through the upper epidermis. Now with this waxy cuticle here, the water will not leave the leaf through the upper epidermis. Alright, so this reduces water loss, and that's important because the plant needs water, the leaf needs water for photosynthesis. Now finally, notice that the upper epidermis also lacks chloroplasts. The cells do not have chloroplasts, for the very important reason of the upper epidermis allows light to enter the leaf so that the layers below can carry out photosynthesis. Alright. Our second layer is the palisade mesophyll, this layer here, below the upper epidermis. Now the palisade mesophyll is a single layer of closely packed cylindrical cells. So importantly, the cells are very closely packed, right? And they are cylindrical. So in three-dimensional, they will look a bit like cylinders. Now the important thing is that they have a large number of chloroplasts, a very large number of chloroplasts per cell. And that is to allow them to absorb the maximum amount of sunlight near the surface of the leaf, right? Because the surface of the leaf receives the most sunlight. So most of the photosynthesis takes place here, right? Light passes through the upper epidermis, and because the cells are so closely packed and they have so many chloroplasts, they carry out the majority of photosynthesis in the leaf. Alright, so near the surface of the leaf, there is a lot of sunlight, so the palisade mesophyll is adapted to absorb the maximum amount of sunlight near the surface of the leaf. Right, next we turn our attention first to the spongy mesophyll. They are very spongy. And why are they spongy? Okay, it's because they are loosely packed. Right, can you see the cells here? They are not like the palisade mesophyll, which are closely packed. Here they are loosely packed. And as a result, there are very large intercellular spaces, meaning large spaces between cells, right? Inter means between, cellular means cells. So there are large spaces between cells, large intercellular spaces. Now the main reason for this is that it allows for the rapid diffusion of gases. So we'll see later that gases like carbon dioxide enter the leaf through the lower epidermis, right? And it needs to diffuse and circulate throughout the leaf. So these intercellular spaces allow for rapid diffusion of carbon dioxide into the leaf and oxygen out of the leaf. Now, next, compared to the Palisade mesophyll, the spongy mesophyll have fewer chloroplasts. And that is simply because the spongy mesophyll receive less sunlight than the Palisade mesophyll. Okay, because most of the sunlight has already been absorbed in the Palisade mesophyll, there is still some remaining sunlight. Alright, so the spongy mesophyll still needs some chloroplasts, but it has fewer. It doesn't need so many. And that's how it's adapted for photosynthesis. It's worth noting as well that because it allows for rapid diffusion of carbon dioxide, right? Carbon dioxide is a raw material of photosynthesis too. Alright, so the spongy mesophyll helps the leaf carry out photosynthesis by allowing carbon dioxide to rapidly diffuse through the intercellular spaces, and also by having relatively fewer chloroplasts to absorb the remaining sunlight. And next we have the lower epidermis, right, the bottom layer of the leaf. And the lower epidermis is also a single layer of closely packed cells, like the upper epidermis. It also has a transparent waxy cuticle. Okay, but the difference is the lower epidermis has guard cells and stomata, right? The guard cells are these cells, and the stomata is the space between the guard cells, right? It's the kind of holes in the leaf which allow gases to enter the leaf or to leave the leaf. Alright, so stomata and guard cells help to regulate the entry and exit of gases. And that's important for photosynthesis. Right? Without stomata, carbon dioxide cannot enter the leaf and allow the leaf to carry out photosynthesis. Now take note, are there chloroplasts in the lower epidermis? The answer is yes, because the guard cells have chloroplasts. So if you look at this diagram very closely, you will see that the guard cells have chloroplasts. And finally, we're going to look at the vascular bundle. Now the vascular bundle in the leaf contains xylem and phloem. First things first, you need to know which one is on top in the leaf. Right, so if you take a look here, you can see that it is the xylem which is on top in a leaf, and the phloem which is the one below it. And the xylem, we've already learned that it's made out of dead and hollow cells, and it helps to transport water and mineral salts. You must always remember the mineral salts as well. The phloem transports sugars and other manufactured food substances. Alright, so that's the function of the phloem. So here's a diagram from a real leaf, a real cross section of the leaf, and you can see that we have the kind of Palisade mesophyll here, upper epidermis, alright, the spongy mesophyll, and then here's our vascular bundle, and the top layer is the xylem, and the bottom layer is the phloem. Alright, you need to know the arrangement of the xylem and phloem in the leaf. Okay, I'm not sure how you're going to remember it, but just remember the xylem's on top in the leaf. Now, I'm just going to end off with a very interesting analogy for the leaf. So the other day I saw one of you post a photo in the group of people raving at some concert. So I think to ask this question, have you ever gone to a big, huge concert and cheered your hearts out and saw people performing like a famous band or something? I'm sure some of you have, right? Now, interestingly, this can be used as an analogy for the structure of our leaf. How? So you can imagine that the stage is like, the stage is like the upper epidermis. is where all the stars are performing on stage and singing their hearts out. The stars, right? So the lights are on stage, right? So the stage is like the upper epidermis where the light enters the leaf, right? Because all the lights are on stage. Now, normally in a concert, you'll see, right, the first few rows are full of very enthused fans. You know, 我的偶像 my idol then you can cheer. And they're all in 2 rows, very enthusiastic, all in front. So all very closely packed, right? So this is a bit like my Palisade mesophyll, right? Closely packed cells, all very near the stage, very near the upper epidermis. And of course, behind the stage, you know, we have some not so enthusiastic friends. They're there, maybe waiting for their boyfriend, girlfriend to cheer their hearts out or something. You know, they're walking around, loitering around, and they have a greater number of spaces in between them. So this, you can think of it as the spongy mesophyll, right? Where there are very large intercellular spaces. And of course, sometimes you get small groups that are kind of like, you know, they like to cluster together. So you can imagine these are like the vascular bundles. And finally, at the back, we have the back of the concert hall, right? These are fans waiting for friends gathering in a line at the back. And we have security guards who kind of regulate the entry and exit of people. So you can think of this as the lower epidermis. And you can think of the security guards as our guard cells. So I don't know, I mean, maybe this is not very helpful for you, but it is something interesting that you can relate to when you're trying to remember the structure of a leaf. Alright, I'd like to end off with 2 things. So firstly, it is not that simple. Right, what you have learned in this chapter is the structure of a dicot leaf. What does that mean? Now, when you look at your syllabus, you will see that what you need to know is the structure of a typical dicotyledonous leaf. It is quite a mouthful. Dicotyledonous leaf. Dicotyledonous. So therefore, we just call it dicot. So dicots are plants, right, with 2 cotyledons. Okay, whatever that is, this is a cotyledon is a seed leaf. Okay, this is just extra. Okay, so for example, you know your green beans when you grow in primary school. Who has grown green beans before? You know when it grows up, right, you will see that the seed splits into 2 seed leaves. Right, the green bean kind of like the leftover part is 2 halves of the seed. Right, 2 seed leaves. So there are some plants which are dicots, and we have learned about the dicot leaf. Right, dicot leaves tend to have this network of veins. Right, so it's like more like networky in arrangement. There are also plants called monocots, which have a single seed leaf. Example, corn. Right, corn, if you grow it, it will not look like, you know, you only have a single seed leaf. And their leaves tend to look like this, right? Parallel veins. Right, so like your grass is a monocot, and a few other plants as well. So we have not learned about the monocot leaves. Those will look very different. What we have learned is about the dicot leaves. Okay, so that's just some awareness for you. The final thing is I would like you to think about this challenging problem. Right, if Larry, here's Larry again. Haha, Larry. Hi, Larry. And now Larry seems to have worn sunglasses because he is wanting to migrate to the desert. Now, if Larry went to the desert, would you have any recommendations for how he can adapt? Now, if you're interested, you can look at these pages. They give you some examples of how leaves are adapted for a hot environment. You can start by going to research this plant called maram grass, which is a grass that is found in very dry and hot places. Have fun. Now, finally, I would like you to read your textbook. I would like you to read this very important question of what happens to the glucose, the products of photosynthesis. So go and read textbook 126, and once you've done that, you can read the last video. You can watch the last video. Now, it's important to read it because in my last video, I'll just be summarizing it. So it won't be the whole thing. So have a read first, and then I'll summarize it in the last video. Alright, see you there.